Right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us as usual for our webinar series on getting ready for end of the year preparation and things of that nature. Today's topic regarding that is 1099s unveiled. We're going to be clearing up some confusion here. Julia is going to be helping us with that. This is our part two of two in our end of the year end webinar series. So Julia, thank you again, as always, for putting this on for us and sharing all this useful information. Just for those of you who are new to the webinar and have not met Julia, she has her own company called New Age Consulting, New Age Financial Consulting. I should know this by now. How long have I known you?
I don't know, Anthony. This is questionable here.
It's Wednesday. So, in any event, Julia specializes in bookkeeping and accounting support, including CFO services for a variety of size businesses, mainly in the interior design industry. She also specializes in unique and complex accounting needs of interior design firms and showrooms, and she has a comprehensive procurement package for designers and showrooms that she would love to share with any of you who are interested. We'll go ahead and put her contact information up at the end of the webinar. So if you'd like to reach out to her, you can. With that being said, the last house cleaning item that we go over, this is a Q&A webinar. So at the end, we'll be going through all of the questions that come in. So at any point in time you have one, let's capture it. Click the, I believe it's in your Zoom toolbar, and it is a question mark box now. So if you click on that, um, that'll populate a window. You can enter in your question at any time, and then we'll get to them as soon as we possibly can and hopefully get through all of them. With that being said, Julia, I will hand it over to you and you can go ahead and take over the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing great. Just make sure I share my right screen, please. Good?
We are good.
You're in business? Perfect. So yes, to start it off, you are correct. They changed the Q&A box a little bit, which is actually, it looks super cute. I'm always open to answering questions in real time, especially if they're applicable to a screen or something that we're in. So by all means, post them as you think of them. I do go through them in order and I get through as many as we can. So today's topic is 1099s. That does have a lot to do with end of year. And if you have other end of year questions, I would say if we could keep them accounting specific, that would be great. But if not, by all means, throw whatever you have out there. And we're going to just take a deep dive into 1099. Some of this will be repeat from part one if you joined part one, and then there are a few studio designer changes regarding 1099s. So we're going to discuss those as well. So favorite question is, well, what is a 1099 and why is it needed? So the IRS requires you to send a 1099 form for any service provider, and I would say service can be a loose term, that you paid over $600 to. In addition, the companies and the individuals receiving a 1099 are ones that are not incorporated. So how would you know that? What does that mean? So before you send a 1099, you are legally required to collect a W-9. Okay, well, what does that mean? So a W-9 is a federal form. I pulled it up, Google it. I usually save it to my desktop or to a drive of just commonly used IRS forms. And anytime you're entering a new vendor into Studio, so go to projects and all addresses, and you go to new address. Actually, let's go to an existing one just so we could click around. Anytime you're entering a new address into Studio, a really good practice, hard to keep up with, but a really good practice is to send a new vendor a W-9. Now, are you going to send Target a W-9? No. Are you going to send Pottery Barn one? No. But if you become very just accustomed to when you are corresponding with a new vendor over email, this becomes part of your process. So you're requesting a W-9 from the vendor out of the gate. And so why are you doing that? So this collects their their information. It allows you to understand their legal business name, their legal address, and then down here, section 3A, what type of entity are they? So are they an individual sole proprietor? Are they an LLC? Are they a C corp? They're really, I would say, outdated at this point, but some of the bigger companies may be that still. Are they an S corp? Or are they something even more complicated, such as an LLC taxed as an S corp? So now this leads back to, okay, well, you received a W-9 from a vendor. Now what? Well, the W-9 that the vendor, and so maybe 1,000 bulbs isn't a great example. We had ABC Storage or something in here. Oh, AA Custom Furniture. That's the one I always go to. So AA Custom Furniture is a brand new vendor. I'm a designer. I work for, I believe we're in Robert Stone Consulting Interiors. So I work for Robert Stone. I reach out to AA Custom Furniture because they're working on some upholstery items for me. And I say to them, please send me back your W-9. So they send me back their W-9. It gives me their entity name and their address, and then their EIN down here. And then they tell me that they're actually an LLC, but they're taxed as an S corp. So who receives a 1099? So anyone who performs, again, a service, anyone who is paid over $600, anyone who is paid over $600 cash, because that matters, cash versus credit card. Your credit card processors, meaning your American Express card, your Capital One card, your Citi card, they actually are legally required to send their own 1099s. To sign up for a merchant account, you need to submit your tax information. So the credit card companies will be sending 1099s independently. You are required to send 1099s for cash transactions only. We need to be utilizing our studio reports to capture that information correctly. So, and we'll get to that. And then I think we're on now step 4, right? So what type of entities received 1099s? So individual sole proprietors, LLCs that are taxed as an LLC. So if an LLC is taxed as an S corporation, they actually don't receive a 1099. And why? Well, I think why I can't necessarily answer you that, but the goal of the 1099 for the IRS is that verification of income. So if we're AA Custom Furniture, and AA Custom Furniture does all this work, and they're an LLC, they're not taxed as an S corp. And so they're receiving 1099s from individuals, and the IRS is receiving that copy as well. The 1099s received by the government total $1 million. But when AA Custom Furniture goes and files their tax return, they only file $900,000 of gross income. That automatically means that they omitted $100,000 of income. And why is that? So obviously they did something wrong, but that's the reason the government is asking for these 1099s, is to verify that businesses are reporting what they received. Typically, your larger corporations are, especially C Corps and S Corps. That's a great question. I will get to that momentarily. So your C Corps and S Corps, I would say again, like typically are not reporting income, right? They're reporting everything that they receive. So the 1099 structure is for some, I would say, smaller businesses. Now, I don't know if any of you remember, but a couple of years ago, the IRS did make a change, and they actually required, and they retracted it, but they required everyone to receive a 1099 for anything that was paid. In a way, it would make it a lot easier. You'd be open to less like interpretation. Everyone that you paid in cash would get a 1099, regardless if you paid them $2, $20, $300, C Corp, S Corp, doesn't matter. But they must have gotten a lot of pushback. That would have been a big undertaking for small businesses. And they retracted that. I do honestly anticipate that will become the norm at some point in time, sooner rather than later. I could be wrong, but that's sort of my own gut check. As years have gone on, they have become more and more strict with 1099 reporting requirements. You are now legally required to submit electronic 1099s to the government if you file more than 10. So if you have 9, you can still print them and mail them. If you have more than 10, you have to file them online. You have to file them electronically. So that's something to keep in mind. That's a change that came about last year or the year before, but recent enough. So they're going to continue to make the IRS process easier and faster for them to receive the information and to do that double check. So someone had a really great question. And does the IRS require you to have a W-9 on file for a service vendor that you paid 600 or more by credit card only? So I would like the best business practice is just to collect a W-9, because how do you know whether or not what if AA Custom Furniture takes American Express and wires? Like, what if you pay them both methods? And we'll see that when we pull some of the reports out of Studio. So because you may not know that out of the gate, just really great practice, especially if you're corresponding with a vendor in email, is to say to them, please send me your W-9. A great feature in Studio, I would say newer feature, right? We talk about it a lot, or I talk about it a lot for sure, is that on your vendor ID, so right, I'm in projects, I always go to addresses. I don't love the top three. I like this last option here. On anything in your address ID section, so both client and vendor, you could now attach documentation. So you could attach images and attachments, which is amazing. And so go ahead and upload all your W-9 information in here. So click on upload. We usually create a folder. We call it W-9's test in here. This is the test account. And so this is where we start uploading sofas and W-9s. So the sofa should not belong, but just a really great central place. So regardless of who's working on or working with this vendor, regardless if you have turnover in accounting or an office administrative role, all of the documentation lives within Studio. So that's something great to consider. So now what? So now you received this W-9 from AA Custom Furniture. They told you that they were an LLC. So that means they're subject to W-9 and 1099 reporting. You go in and you upload it in images and attachments, but that's really only step one. So then under your code section, and because we're in a vendor ID, the system defaults to vendor codes. If you were in an ID up here that was a client ID or a project ID, it would default to client codes. But under your vendor codes, you have this section over here on the right that says 1099, yes or no, and the federal ID or the social security number. Honestly, I will say I don't think I ever really use the social box, and I have no reason why, probably just habit. I tend to put everything into the federal ID box, regardless if it's a social or an EIN. And the yes or no is self-explanatory, but if you know that somebody receives a W-9, toggle it to yes. If you know somebody doesn't, toggle it to no. The way we work in terms of our office is even if somebody's a no here, meaning that let's say that it's AA Custom Furniture and they're actually an S Corp. So they're going to send you back this W-9 and they're going to say, oh, we're an S Corp. So I would still, and I like to do this just for good practice, is I still put their EIN in and then I toggle them to no. But what that at least allows me as a double check and like a trigger to know, oh, well, that means I should A, have a W-9 here, B, I received their EIN, and C, it's very clear that they're a no. So it just hopefully allows everyone on the team to have good habits to say, okay, we'll still put it in and toggle it to no. Depending on how big your team is and who's responsible for W-9s, even if the designers are obtaining them in vendor correspondence and they're sending them either to you or somebody in accounting or uploading them here, this is still a really good place to start, because if this is, let's say, just not filled in, none of this is filled in, you could at least go through your vendors to then look for the W-9s that are attached. So all things to consider when you're either going through your 2024 history for payments that are made, or you're setting up strong habits for 2025. So let's go back to codes and let's actually go back to, we'll turn this back onto yes. And I don't know what the heck was in here. We'll go like that. So I've been doing a great job. I've been collecting my 1099s. I've been putting my EINs in. Well, and so now what, right? It's almost the end of the year and I need to start to understand, who am I missing? Who do I need to obtain the W-9 from if I haven't been doing that? And then who receives a 1099 come January? So the deadline to file is the last day of January. So this is a great end of the year project. So open up reports. Yes, 2023 needs to be closed, and then go to all. And when you go to all, put 1099 in here. And if you notice, there were some changes made to Studio. So you used to be able to print the 1099 form on a previously purchased 1099 form that went into your printer. The forms are consistently changing, and then with the update for electronic, or with the push of the IRS for electronic filings, you are no longer able to print your 1099s out of studio. That doesn't mean if you only have 3 to send, you can't buy the forms and, for example, even handwrite them in, or create yourself, like a Word document, sort of like a word processor, way back, like a typewriter form in Word to print them out. But that, if you're a longtime studio user, they used to be right here on the bottom, and they are gone. So our goal is for everyone to file electronically and to utilize the reports out of studio to do so. So there are a lot of different filing options. Track 1099, I believe, is the one we use as an entity, and we've used now for the last couple of years. Track 99 was bought by Avalara, I would say a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. They do make it really easy. You can upload different reports from studio. You use a CSV file, you format it correctly, it'll keep your information year over year. It'll email the vendor directly out of Avalara for you. It'll then also electronically file with the IRS. You'll get confirmations, yes or no. If a vendor doesn't have an email on file, or you don't have one for them, Avalara or Track 1099 will mail the form on your behalf as well. So they've been a great, oh look, they changed this person's life. They've done a good job, and I would say too, they're very user friendly. From our perspective, we've used them now probably since COVID, actually. So again, keep that in mind as you're going through your filing requirements. So again, we're at the end of the year, we're going through our information, and one of the first things I do actually is I pull before I even look at my 1099 report, I pull my cash disbursement by vendor summary report. I don't remember who I've paid. I don't remember when I paid them. I just don't remember, right? So this, at least very quickly, I could pull to see, okay, who have I paid this year? And if you notice, I put my date range in. And my cash disbursements isn't necessarily by cash or by credit card, not the summary. But at least I'm able to see what's going on. Who have I done a lot of business with? Does anybody come to mind offhand? On hand. I know that, look, I paid Camille's Furniture, but it's only $100. Oh gosh, I know I didn't get that W-9 from them. They were doing like a small fix for me. And cash disbursements let's actually go by vendor. I'm going to show you this report too. So this is my starting point. And I start with the summary, and then I pull this one. Because depending on how clean or how well you've been posting into your GL, you'll also may be able to then identify, okay, well, first dibs, I could see, because I know my system, that I paid them with an Amex, and first dibs is product. So maybe actually a bad example. Let's go to ABC Ship Solutions. So what is ABC Ship Solutions? They are providing a service. They're shipping something. They're a freight company. Let's assume that they're a freight company. We've paid them over $600. I could see that I paid them on my Amex, 2 transactions on my Amex, and I'm going to assume, and maybe this is incorrect, but let's assume my database is super clean. And I'm going to assume that this check number here is a cash transaction. So that means that I paid them $226 in cash. So in theory, 226 is the dollar value that would go on your 1099. They are a service provider. We confirm that they are an LLC. They're not an S Corp. And this is the number that would be reported. Now, remember, it's less than $600. So will you exclude that when you report, or will you include it? At that point, I would say it's up to you. IRS does not require you to report until over 600. A lot of times though, when I pull my studio reports, I don't always exclude. Like, even if it's something little, just because especially if it's a big file and there's a lot of vendors, I may file this anyway. Right. And my opinion of that is the vendor should not get upset by that by any means, because this is money that I paid them, so they should be reporting it anyway. I could see as I move down my list, Arteriors, these are clearly just check numbers. That means they came out of my cash account. Now, granted, Arteria is this product, so this 3,025 wouldn't be subject to a 1099. It does become tricky, for example, if you use someone for product and services. So for example, that custom upholsterer, right? That custom upholsterer is providing you a service and potentially delivering you a product. But because it's product and services, they would still be subject to a 1099. A receiving warehouse, right? Their services, they're subject to a 1099. Anyone in the services industry, somebody like myself, right? I'm subject to a 1099. I am an S corp. I don't get one. You wouldn't know that unless you emailed me to say, hey, I need a copy of your W-9, please provide. Attorneys, right? 1099s. So just going back to best practices, it's sort of easiest and best when you go through your vendor setup that you ask for that W-9 out of the gate. So these are my first two starting reports. So that way I can understand, okay, who have I paid? Who do I need to talk to? Who can the team reach out to? I know that I don't need one from Pottery Barn. I know that I've done a lot of work with Main Street Upholstery Shop. Shoot, I know that you know what, I have a W-9 from them, but it's 10 years old. I should probably get a new one. There isn't a rule. We get asked this question often of, well, how often should I request a new one? Is it annual? I would say definitely not. But if you've been working with a vendor for a really long time, and a lot of times the vendors that you have been working with for a long time are good about that. If something changed on their W-9, they'll send it to you. But if you know that, for example, a vendor moved, that's a great time to say, hey, can you send me an updated W-9? What if they moved and their entity structure changed? Oh, great question. Oh, so we actually haven't even talked about. So Zelle and Venmo, what's the requirement for Zelle and Venmo? Super fantastic question. This actually goes back to why your check IDs are super important. And I know, like, for us, we are really almost a little bit crazy about the way we use the check number fields for vendors. So Venmo and PayPal, and anybody who's a third party processor. Zelle is not a third party processor. This was a change in 2023, meaning last year's the 1099s that were processed in January 24. Sorry, that's this year. Venmo and PayPal started to report their own 1099s. Zelle is not third party. Zelle is integrated directly into your bank. You are required to track Zelle payments. I am not a Venmo advocate. I'm not their third party. There's, we've seen a lot of issues with Venmo in terms of hacking. And I don't find them to be the safest. So we don't steer clients towards a Venmo accepting and or paying, even though a bill pay is not instantaneous. You know, my first recommendation would always be wire, ACH, or bill pay. But the requirements are different for Zelle versus Venmo, and then Zelle versus PayPal. But that is a really, really great question. And you're going to need to understand that when you're processing your 1099s. And again, this check number field should be really indicative. So let's see if I have some examples in here. So that's a wire. We typically encourage everyone to write, for example, Venmo in this check number field so that you can understand what's Venmo versus not. But the studio report will not differentiate that for you. Okay, so maybe we had some in 2023. Actually, hold on. This was an example for sure last year. We just probably haven't gotten to it yet this year. So here's my 2023. First Dibs is popular year over year. Should also probably use the search field. Nothing should ever be blank. I say that all the time. Same with your cash receipt. So here's your Venmo, right? So when I pull this cash disbursement by vendor report, I'm able to see, oh, I paid John Smith. I paid him with Venmo. That means that I don't need to include this if I'm sending John Smith a 1099, because Venmo is going to do that independently. And so Venmo, again, is third-party processors. So that would be, so credit card processors and third-party processors. Correct. Yes, it doesn't matter if Venmo is hitting the credit card or the checking account. Yes, you would exclude all Venmo. Now, that may be a tedious project. It really, I also think, depends on how often you feel like you use Venmo. And PayPal and Venmo, PayPal, and I guess PayPal is more outdated these days. I feel like there's a third one that we discussed a lot last year at this time, and I'm not going to remember who they are. Zelle, Stripe is the same way, right? So if you're paying somebody with Stripe, that's the same thing. That's third party. Zelle integrated, remember, with your bank, so that transaction is different. So start by reviewing cash disbursements by total. That way you can at least know which vendor to concentrate on. Cash disbursements by vendor. Then, once you feel like you're in a good place for that, go to all reports and then type in 1099. So this goes back to, okay, well, now we know who we've paid. Now we know where or who we need to go to for the W-9s. And let's understand what our next steps are. So if you notice, when I type in 1099 into my report search box up here, my top two reports are showing me disbursements with all payment types. So that literally means cash and credit card, or I mean, anything, suspense, lines of credit, anything. But my next three down here show you by cash account only. So, and there's an explanation in here, excludes credit cards. And this also says excludes credit cards. And this is actually for export to track 1099. So if we go, let's just go to the first one and let's look at what the filters are. So at the moment, this is set to only say vendor 1099 is a yes, but what if I don't know if it's a yes, right? I sort of want to see everything. So I'm going to take yes out. And let's see if it, well, I don't remember. I did this last time, Anthony, and I don't remember if it didn't like that filter. Vendor ID is not blank. That would be correct. Cash account is cash account. And so this isn't liking the fact that it doesn't say yes or no, where I'm going to urge you to go back to the report that I started in. If you have a vendor, where did our friends go? AA custom. Oops. So AA custom. So they're currently filled in as a yes. But if I fill them in as a none, and I don't know if they receive one, this report isn't going to show me, because it's only going to show me my no's and then my yeses. But what happens with all of the ones in between? So I need a place to capture all the ones in between. So if you do a good job of starting with the cash disbursements by vendor summary and then cash disbursements by vendor, and you are able to go through your vendor IDs, you are then able to generate this report here, right? So we don't have a, let's go to 2023, because I know when we did this in 2023, we had a lot more examples. Oh, not really that many, huh? Zach Morris is still on here, Anthony. So for 2023 year, for vendor 1099, yes. Yes, that is also correct. Essential users do not have all the 1099 reports. I believe, Anthony, that sounds correct to me. The one of the tiers in terms of the users, the studio users, doesn't have all of the reports even that I personally recommend and use. So if you need to upgrade your user, you would need to upgrade your user. Anthony, am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, if you need to have access to other reports that you don't currently have, you could upgrade your tier and get access to those to Enterprise or Premier.
Perfect. Is there a way to run a report and include the payment account? So this is telling you the account is cash. So remember, Studio is data in, data out. How does this account cash? How is this pulled? So if you go to your settings and you go to your chart of accounts, the test database is always the best to look at this for, because look, Baker credit, what is Baker credit? That can't possibly be a cash account, but here we are. So when you're setting up your cash accounts, You're toggling it to cash code here and you're toggling it to cash account here. So as long as these toggles are correct, this report is automatically pulling from all of your cash accounts. And then we pulled yes, but let's pull note too to see what no's come up for no's for 2023. And remember your report filters are at the top. So this is letting you know, okay, for anything that was selected from a cash account, here's all of the places you paid. Here's all of the vendors that you paid where it was toggled to no. ABC Stone, Arterials, we're assuming ABC Stone is a no. And you're able to review this list this way. You could also always, right, create a custom report. Like if you wanted to see something different, even with that cash disbursements report, you could always filter that as well. Oh, somebody's asking about the payment by vendor report. Okay, so I like the payment by vendor report again as it's cash disbursements, that one. The cash disbursements report, I actually think you can't, I don't think this will, oh, maybe this other one, maybe by this one by vendor. I don't know if you could filter a cash account onto here. But we would also need to set it up. So go to edit, go to specify data, go to cash. Let's just throw it in and see what happens. We'll put it at the bottom, even though it's not the best place for it. And then go to cash account. So we put in all. And it's false. So this cash account it looks like to me, no, it doesn't look like this is working, but I'm not diving into it. So I don't know why it's telling me false. It's pulling from true. Oh, because this payment must be coming from a cash account. This payment, I'm assuming, must be coming from a credit card. So it's just picking up whether it's correct or incorrect. I love the true and false though. I know this at this point is probably a little bit late, right? But your check numbers are a great indicator. And if you're systematic in how you do your postings, especially if you're importing, right? Anything that's on the credit card, if it's on an American Express, should say AM followed by a six digit date and a dash to maybe include the transaction number. The credit cards that are in your chart of account should have some sort of posting consistency. And then anything that's obviously a true check number was just a check number. ACH is indicative of ACH, wire is indicative of wire. So again, working backwards isn't helpful, but if you establish those great habits moving forwards, I think they can be really, really impactful, especially when it comes to this type of cleanup at the end of the year. Someone just asked, what is the best way to number your checks? So if you're using, for example, electronic checks out of the bank these days and not printing checks anymore, anytime you have a transaction or that you issue a bill payment out of bank account, for example, we do a lot of work with Chase. Chase gives you a unique transaction number tied to every single bill payment that is issued. So for us personally, we copy that ID number issued by the bank, and that goes into our check number here. So that way it's always searchable as well. You can always go into the portal and take a look to say, okay, what happened and who did it? Who was the user tied to that particular transaction? Wires are the same way, right? Wires have a unique verification, ACHs, and then bill pays, like we mentioned as well. Saving all of the above, all of those payment confirmations to your item, also super, super helpful. Because if you're then saying, oh my gosh, I don't know what this means, I don't know where it came from, also says false. Here, if you go into your item screen, and remember, we're in the test database, so gosh only knows what's going on here. Yes, so somebody's saying too, they use Amex followed by the month that the closing statement of the month. I like the real date because of how, for example, either we're tracking or sometimes it's like a really big firm and they need to know the actual date something hit the American Express. But yes, we've definitely seen that before as well, that's just using the closing statement. Um, so under images and attachments, so again, this one is blank. Oh, we're not on 19th Street. Oops. Oh, we are on 19th Street. So adding all of your payment confirmations into the item as well is incredibly helpful. So to recap, just because we're hitting the top of the hour, so to recap, make sure that you, as the end of the year is approaching, you're reconciled in all of your accounts because you need to be reconciled to issue your 1099s. You certainly don't want to accidentally send somebody a 1099 with a duplicate payment that, for example, was never reconciled in your reconciliation screen. And then a vendor is going to be very upset with you to say, how come you doubled my income? I know you didn't pay this to me. And you're gonna say, oh, my report here told me that I did. Well, so this report is only as good as the general ledger. So the general ledger absolutely needs to be reconciled, I would say, for all cash and credit card accounts before you issue 1099s. So at the moment, us as a firm, right, we're avidly communicating with clients who, for example, are potentially maybe behind in 2024, letting them know as a gentle reminder, hey, it's end of the year, we're literally running out of time. So to be able to hit these deadlines, we need to be reconciled and up to date by, middle of January, sort of at the latest. And to track 1099 too. So if you know that you're, let's say you have a lot of 1099s to process, but you are waiting for some missing W-9s, you could have more than one import, right? So you could do them by batches, as long as obviously you're staying organized. But that way you could import them by batches and process them by batches. You don't need to make sure that everything is done at one time. You just need to make sure that everything is done by the filing date. The IRS does state that there is a penalty for 1099s that are not filed on time. Have they ever imposed the penalty? I haven't seen it in my day, in my 20 years here, but that doesn't mean that they haven't, and that doesn't mean that they will. And they actually, I believe they say that the filing penalty per 1099 is up to almost, I believe, like $500 a single 1099. So, it is a real thing. It is a way for the government to ensure tax dollars coming in. And it is our fiduciary responsibility, right? So, and you can have vendors who are tricky, who will say to you, I don't want to send a W-9. And I understand that, right? I mean, it's their personal information. But it is a nice reminder to let them know that it is business practices and that they are required to provide you that. And that you're legally required to make the determination of whether or not they receive a 1099. So between now and I don't know how many weeks there's left, I would say really like 6 to 8. Gather all of the W-9s that you have, begin uploading them, begin filling out your vendor 1099 yes or no, putting in this does not look like the right vendor ID. And when it's time, so come January and everything's reconciled, honestly, just begin filing through an online marketplace that you like. Track 1099 is great, but if there's another one that you're familiar with or that you feel comfortable with, any one of them will suffice. So we have a few minutes left, so let me know if there's any additional questions. And if not, we could end a few minutes early.
Give some time back to everyone.
Yes.
All right, I'll keep the question window open, but I'll put the contact information if you'd like up while people trickle out or put in more questions. Give me 1 second here. Place with this. Share. All right. Is that the contact information? Perfect.
So if
Okay.
you paid a vendor $1,000, but only 700 through cash, the 1099 is for, yes, just for the amount through cash. So if you paid somebody with Venmo and, I mean, you could get creative, right? Venmo and PayPal and Zelle and Wire, that becomes a bit of a project. Oh, you know what? Really great question. What do you write on the 1099 if the vendor refuses to send a W-9? So you can send a 1099 with a blank social security or EIN as long as you have what you think is the correct vendor name and address. You can do that. And I actually would recommend doing that because that's at least you covering your end. Also, remember, if that happens to you, it's a really good time to check in with on your practices and say, shoot, you know what? I really need to be getting that W-9 before I issue a payment. If you send a 1099 that has any type of incorrect, I'm going to call them entries or any type of incorrect data, you will receive a letter from the IRS at the end of the year. I mean, we actually just got them for clients maybe a month ago. So it really did take them how many months? 10, 11 months to get through the 1099s issued in January. And that letter will really just state and let you know the IRS confirmed the information you filed and they cannot find a recipient with the same information. So they're just letting you know to say, okay, there were some inconsistencies with your 1099 reporting. If you're still working with that vendor, that letter even states the recommendation is, to confirm the correct information. And if you're not working with the vendor, obviously there really isn't anything you could do. So just keep in mind, right, that best business practices, as painful as it is, try to collect that W-9 up front. But that is a really great question. And that happens. I think it's almost unavoidable, right? Where you're in a hurry, it happens. It should happen less and less frequently if you take the position of, I will always get a W-9 first. Any, great questions though. Any other questions?
I think we hit them all for right now. I don't have any other ones coming in. But with that being said, if there aren't any, what you see here is Julia's contact information for New Age Financial Consulting. If you need to reach out to Studio for any help, by all means use the chat icon inside Studio Designer, bottom right-hand corner. That will initially introduce you to our Studio Designer assistant. If they can't answer the question, then it can absolutely create a case for you that my support team actually um, will be able to follow up with, get you the answers that you're looking for. Again, our knowledge base is always available as a resource as well. Other than that, again, thank you so much for your time and spending it with us, and we'll see y'all next time. Julia, thanks as always.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.